Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for watching another video today. I really appreciate you going out of your way to like, comment, and subscribe. That means a lot to me, so thank you guys for doing that. Now let's dive into medium diving crankbaits, because I talked about this quite a bit in the colder months when you reel a crankbait really slow, but now as we get into the hotter months, it's all about burning a crankbait. So those crankbaits that dive 9, 8, 7, 6 feet of water, I'm trying to get them to dive to their maximum depth, and I'm fishing them fast, covering water, a great way to catch bass that aren't highly detected from side scan, down scan, and all that other fancy electronics that are going on. So I feel like you can sometimes get ahead of the curve or just get away from the crowds by throwing medium diving crankbaits as we get more into the post-spawn summer months. Bass love a crankbait. Really, any time of the year, in any condition, a crankbait is going to work. You look at some of the best fishermen of all time, they are all crankbait aficionados because it just catches fish from the second it hits the water until you get it all the way back to your rod tip. I mean, it is an appealing bait for fish, all types of fish, and bass obviously love them too. So I want to give you 4 medium diving crankbaits that I really like, and then the situations where they work. And maybe one of these situations is where you fish a lot, so you could catch more fish with this. So when you get into really steep lakes, now not just bluffy banks, but you look on the banks and it is more than a 45-degree angle, you know, banks that are just everywhere you go, you know, if it's the back of the pocket, the main lake, wherever it may be, and you just have docks with cables and it just falls off. I love a Norman little N deep. This is a great crankbait. I think there's become some new crankbaits recently, like the Fritside 9, that maybe have taken this place, you know, a DT10, but this one's different. You know, that longer bill, it just seems like it gets down. It still has that kind of medium size. You know, this is technically a deep diving crankbait, but I like to fish this close to the bank. So this is one of those baits that has always worked for me when you have really steep banks and you have fish that key in on shad. The Norman Little N Deep is just one of those crankbaits. It's loud. You know, I know a lot of guys like silent baits, but just seems like this bait, if you need to get to fish that are out in that 9-foot range, this is one of those baits that catches them. So this is one of my favorites. I don't think it gets thrown a whole lot, and you can find it about anywhere. So that is a Norman Little N Deep. Now, when you get a little bit shallower, you know, that 8-foot range, maybe you're fishing over brush piles. At the tops of the brush piles are in 8 feet of water. Maybe you're just fishing steeper type banks where you have some type of cover. You know, maybe it's some grass, but then it falls off quickly. I really have always been a big fan of the Strike King Series 3. And this is that Strike King Pro Model Series. This isn't their XD series, but this was a great line of crankbaits for grass, for a lot of those lowland lakes where you just had a lot of cover that was shallower. You know, the deepest good cover in the lake was that 8-foot range or that 10-foot range. So this crankbait was amazing, and I still throw this a lot. I love throwing it over the tops of trees, but it's one of those deals where this was the crankbait, the Strike King Pro Model, the Series 5, one of the best deep grass crankbaits, one of the best deep crankbaits really until side imaging came along, and that's when we needed 6XDs and 5XDs, and it changed the Strike King outlook on crankbaits. But that Series 3 is a killer. I mean, you talk to good crankbait fishermen, that was their crankbait. The Series 5 was their crankbait. So that is still a really good line. I love it in grass. I love it around wood. It's just one of those deals where if you have some deep stuff on your lake to fish, you know, relatively deep, but it's mostly a flatter, shallower lake, I really like that bait. Now, the wigglewort, I'm not going to go too far into wiggleworts because that is a great 7-foot crankbait. You know, you see that really dominate in the Ozarks. Pretty much any lake that has 45-degree rock banks and those fish want to get, you know, a little bit deeper on those rocks, it's a great bait for that. Now, you hear a lot about the square bill. Let's not talk about the square bill in this video, but don't be afraid to always have a square bill tied on because fish love to get shallow. You know, if you have rising water or you just have consistent water levels, fish are going to go in that 2-foot range. They just do that. They do that year round. There's always something, you know, if it's the mayflies or the bluegill, there's always something dragging bass back to the bank. Now, there's times a year where the bank just isn't good. You know, right now we're getting a lot of that boating pressure. A lot of those pleasure boaters are out there. They kind of wash the banks. So fish do kind of migrate off the banks once a lot of people start getting on the water. But that's not to say that fish won't always find a way to get back shallow. So the square bill is one of those baits that you just got to have tied on if you like to crank. But for today's video, the medium diving crankbait, and my favorite medium diving crankbait, I've talked about this a little bit earlier in the year when I was saying that this bait, when you reel it slow, it's a great 3-foot crankbait. Now we've got it at its maximum depth. DT6 by Rapala. It's going to get out to 6 feet of water, and this is great anytime you have a shallow bar, you know, that may be 6 feet, the deepest, 5 feet, somewhere around there. And grass, one of the greatest grass crankbaits. I love this crankbait in shallow drains. You know, any type of pocket typically has a drain in it where all that water is going to funnel off. That is a great crankbait for that, because that is consistent with the depth in shallow drains. So if you have fish that use the tops of drains on your lake, you know, where they get the shallowest, DT6 is perfect for that. If it's grass or gravel, whatever it may be, it's just a really good bait for that. I love searching around with a DT6 when you have fish that are in that depth range. So this, like I said earlier, is one of those deals where those fish can hide from side imaging. They can hide from all the fancy technology that we have, and it just seems like that even the forward-facing sonar guys can't see them because they're tucked down at the bottom. A crankbait is one of those major players in that relatively shallower water, but deep enough to where there is a little bit of a temperature change and those fish can summer on those tight places. We're in that day and age where technology is really kind of dominating everything, and if you can find a way to get away from it and fish for unpressured fish that have not been hit with the ping, then you can sometimes find bigger schools of fish that just no one else has found. So a medium diving crankbait, a great tool if you like to use your electronics, or you don't, you just like to get out there and feel around. It is a great bait. So try a medium diving crankbait in those scenarios that I told you. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.